Hello, we are going to start soon. Could you please take a seat? Over there?
Maaf, ini yang cewek ada snack bilang mau Ellen, gimana? Tinggalin di meja aja. Oke.
Okay, we are going to start the afternoon plenary now. So I hope you had an awesome day of learning and engagement. If you Google 10 ways to make the most of a conference, it will tell you that one of the ways is to put away your mobile and to focus on the in-person interactions around you. So engage and be in the moment. Remember, you're not just making connections, you are planting relations. Our first keynote speaker for this afternoon hails from the Rockefeller Foundation. Over 100 years since their launch in 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation's mission remains unchanged, and that is to promote the well-being of humanity throughout the world. A champion for impact investing, the Rockefeller Foundation has built a reputation as a trailblazer for transformative change. Please welcome Elizabeth Yee, Executive Vice President, Program Strategy, and Chief of Staff at the Rockefeller Foundation.
Thanks, Dorothy. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's amazing to see such a big crowd here. Thanks for sticking with the program. And Nana, if you're here, thank you to you and the AVPN team for inviting me to join you and for not only bringing 1,100 people together, but 1,100 energized people who are committed to action. I think that is an amazing thing. So I was asked to talk to you about the secret sauce for catalyzing systems change, and to do that in about 7 minutes. So I am going to do my very best to tell you what I know. I think the secret is, in 10 seconds, we're still figuring it out. But let me share with you 2 of the things that we've been doing to drive systems change and what we've learned along the way. So over the last 2 years, everyone in this room and so many partners outside of it have taken extraordinary steps to respond to COVID-19. But we all have to admit that our actions have been insufficient. We are in the middle of a significant divergence where you see high-income countries on their way to real recovery and lower and middle-income countries without the means to do exactly the same. In Southeast Asia alone, the pandemic pushed 4.7 million people into extreme poverty in 2021, and the pandemic also left 54 million people in the region food insecure. And these vulnerabilities are being compounded by crises like the war in Ukraine. Not to mention, Asia-Pacific is incredibly vulnerable to climate change, and 57 million people were affected by climate disasters in this region, and if left unchecked, it could cost the region 8% of its GDP by 2060. So this is proof of how inadequate our current global systems are to address the crises of the 21st century. And this is why it is so important that this room comes together to reimagine our current systems and redesign them so that we can actually meet today's challenges and unlock the potential to change the trajectory while avoiding the worst of climate change. So I wanted to share with you 2 stories of how we're approaching this challenge and how we're looking to measure and address some of humanity's biggest challenges in the current years ahead. So for us, as we think about systems change, we really think about our small, clear, measurable point of view around the change that we seek to drive. So if we can all go back to that terrible spring of 2020, when we had an untraceable virus with absolutely no certainty on how to protect people, where it was going, no vaccine in sight. When we sat in New York and thought about it, we thought, what are we going to do? And we knew we needed to do something, and we knew we needed to figure it out quickly. When we looked at our portfolio, we said we had a multi-decade-long investment in something called precision public health, which is basically empowering community health workers in vulnerable communities to use data and technology to understand and prioritize where they need to go first. And so as we surveyed the landscape and we spoke with experts, we realized the failure in the system. The only tool that we had to fight the virus at that time was something called a PCR test, which we now are all familiar with, but we didn't know it at the time. And results at that time were 7 to 14 days and cost hundreds of dollars, basically fighting a war with 2 hands tied behind your back. So our goal internally became, let's get tests, get them quick, make them cheap, and because we know that this is the only tool that we have to fight this disease until vaccines were available. And we knew it would also enable us to partner with our existing healthcare networks to access vulnerable populations that needed that testing to keep their communities safe. Now, the majority of our health investment was in India. And we knew that the Indian government was facing the same challenges so many governments around the world. They couldn't get affordable PCR test kits fast enough. Everyone had to import all of the reagents and the plastic vials, and that just wasn't coming in fast enough. And importing those items drove those components to $70 a test, which is nearly half the monthly per capita income of many Indian families. And so with global trade at a standstill and these huge demand for test kits from the United States and elsewhere, deliveries were delayed time and time and time again. So the Indian government asked its principal scientific advisor and its Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms, or CCAMP, to quickly find a way to produce the test kits locally. And so we partnered with the Indian government, with CCAMP, with Tata Consultancy Services, and we worked with local Indian manufacturers to push through these rapid changes and build a testing industry in India where it didn't exist before. And so as a result of that, we were able to produce incredible changes. We achieved our goal of manufacturing 500,000 Indian-produced test kits a day, and we decreased the cost of those test kits by 97%. And we use this solution to replicate similar models in the United States and across Africa. And so this is what's possible when a government clearly sets a target and mobilizes the right measurements, right partners to meet it. And the Indian government, to their credit, convened supporters from across borders and sectors to get the capital and the knowledge that they needed to both achieve the results and accelerate them. And I believe that the same success is possible on climate action, which we so desperately need. For the past decade and a half, we've been working to scale reliable, renewable energy in rural communities across Asia. And our perspective on that has always been, if we improve energy access, we can reduce poverty and fight climate change. And so in 2018, we started a program called Smart Power Myanmar that basically is focused on improving the lives of 240,000 people. 49% of those have been women. And then through another entity called Smart Power India, which we started in 2015, we started a micro-enterprise with Tata Power called TP Renewable Microgrid. And hopefully, over time, we hope that it will become the world's largest microgrid developer and operator, reaching 10,000 villages across India by 2030. And coming out of the pandemic, we thought, we were worried about two trends. One, an increase in fossil fuel generation and the construction of new fossil fuel fleet that would be used to spur economic growth. And two, that vulnerable communities would continue to be left behind in terms of energy access. And we also knew we needed to do something to address the climate emergency. So having learned from those two models in Myanmar and India and proven out our model, we felt that it was time to scale the solutions that we had and take it to the next level. So at COP26 last year, together with the IKEA Foundation and the Bezos Earth Fund, as well as 18 governments, NGOs, and development finance institutions, I think Asia Development Bank is here, IRENA is here today, we launched the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. And so right now, the Alliance partners are working in 12 different countries across 3 different continents, including right here in Indonesia. We're working with the government of Indonesia and the Asian Development Bank to determine how together we can actually advance the country's renewable energy goals that the Minister Lahut talked about this morning. And over the next decade, we hope to help get the Alliance to reach 60 countries around the world. And through this work, we hope that we can achieve the dual goals of reducing energy poverty and accelerating energy transition, and also reducing climate change impacts by ensuring a more rapid transition to clean energy for everyone, everywhere. So what's the takeaway on systems change, which was the whole point of this? For us, we engage in systems change once we've done our homework, and we have clear opportunities where we can effectively partner with others for even greater impact. And we do this through a systematic process. So first, we figure out what is the change we seek to drive, and we articulate that change in quantitative terms. Second, we engage our stakeholders to understand what those interventions are. So that's government leaders, private sector stakeholders, citizens, because we can only move at the speed of trust. And then third, we build our collaborations, we build our coalitions, we execute on multiple pilots where we want to work, we develop our interventions, and we measure our impact and learning so that we can fail fast, fix fast, and get back out there again. And then fourth, we invest heavily and flexibly up front. I was telling someone yesterday, in the US we call it flood the zone. That's what we do. And we're flexible on our capital. We write grants, we do guarantees, we make equity and debt investments, and we make it a whole of RF effort because we cannot solve this through one lens alone. Our history, over 110 years almost, has taught us the only way to get us to systems change is to start small and figure out ways you can address that long-term change through these short-term crises, through these solutions. Because when you only focus on scale, you don't know necessarily what's going to work and the value of testing ideas. None of the challenges we face today are simple. And that's why we need the collective energies of this room to turn the possible into the probable. So it's only together, as we've talked about for the last day, that we can build this equitable planet that we hope to do together. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That is an excellent lead-in to the next plenary. We all share a passion to change the world. The bigger question is, how do we do this in a more effective way, where we are addressing social problems, not just in a linear way, but embracing the complexity and interconnectedness of the world that we live in. The systems change approach addresses causes, not just symptoms, and this plenary will discuss how effective governance is a secret sauce for catalyzing systems change. Please welcome Wu Wei Neng, Executive Director, Chandler Institute of Governance, Dr. Beverly Ho, Concurrent Director, Health Promotion and Disease Prevention and Control Bureau, Department of Health, Philippines, Purnima Dori, Director, Analytics, Insights and Impact, Tata Trust, Dr. Toplas Yomnek, Assistant Professor and Director of Political Economic Studies Center, Faculty of Economics, Chulalongkorn University.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm very excited to be here amongst you all. So let's start off with this. My name is Paw Pat Yomanak. I'm the Director of Political Economics Center at Chulalongkorn University and a co-founder at HAND Social Enterprise for Good Governance. Talking about good governance and collaboration between government and private sector and civil society. In one of the research that the university has done, found that there are hundreds of anti-corruption, good governance initiatives all around the world, initiated by private and civil society. So this makes many people think that, oh, maybe we can just disregard or ignore the government because we can create our own initiatives. However, unfortunately, we found that only 10 to 20% of those initiatives are still operating and effective. So we found that one of the key elements of success in an effective is the effective collaboration between public and private sector. Let me give you an example, very quick one. There's an anti-corruption initiative in Thailand called Integrity Pact, initiated by the private sector, supported by the government, and used off-the-edge technology to do data analysis. It has saved over $3 billion from public procurement in the last 5 years. Very interesting. So when philanthropic effort meets support from capable government, great things can happen. So in this session today, without further ado, we will discuss opportunity and challenges and how to overcome them. With me here today on the stage, we have Mr. Wu Wei Neng, the Executive Director of Chandler Institute of Governance, Dr. Purnima Dori, Director of Analytic Insights and Impact from Tata Trust, and Dr. Beverly Lauren Ho, the Concurrent Director of Health Promotion Bureau and Disease Prevention Control, Department of Health from the Philippines. May I start off with asking each of you to briefly introduce yourself and your organization in relation to the topic. May I start with you? Thank you.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the Department of Health in the Philippines, but I'm a physician by training. Over the last 10 years, I've done work on health financing and policy in the country. But during the pandemic, I was suddenly thrust into communication and marketing work to encourage Filipinos to wear their mask and to get themselves vaccinated. I'm also I guess, a product of generous strategic support from private funds who made possible for me to experience world-class education, leadership programs, as well as other mid-career programs that I would otherwise not have been able to access. So I look forward to this discussion this afternoon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Purnima Dore. I'm a practicing economist, and I worked in the area of finance across a number of sectors. I think there's something interesting that happens when you work in finance for a while. You seem to want to look for meaning. And I think that happened with me as well fairly early on. And so I currently work with the Tata Trust as Director for the Analytics, Insights and Impact space. So across all our investments, how do we measure, what do we track, and how do we use better digital tools? Overall, what really excites and inspires me over the years, I think, has been this space of how business, finance, and impact can work together. I enjoy writing, and I like to teach from time to time. And the broader objective is to get more ideas in the room. So I enjoy being in spaces like these. Thank you very much.
Hi, a very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Wei Ning from CIG in Singapore. So I'm really happy to see so many people here when we're talking about governance, and also to be working with AVPN to co-organize this governance track at the conference. I'm a former civil servant with the Singapore government. I've since left. Started out with various ministries in the Ministry of Defense, in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, climate change negotiations up to COP15, and then civil service training and development work in the Singapore government. So I did that for around 20 years, and then I found myself asking, how else can we work with governments well, and how else can we support governments if we're not actually working in the government? And so that question led to the foundation, and several other serendipitous incidents led to the foundation of the Chandler Institute of Governance in Singapore, which is a non-profit organization that works with governments around the world to support them in capability development. So these are close partnerships that we have with governments around the world to support them in three main areas. The first is training, short executive training programs that are heavily practical and skill-based. The second is in terms of technical assistance and project work, which is carefully curated between us and the government to ensure it meets their needs. And lastly, knowledge creation and sharing. So for instance, we produce and distribute a governance index that measures the capabilities and outcomes of 104 governments around the world. So why we do what we do is because we believe that government is key, and we are happy to speak more about this during this session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Just to share with you, before we came up to the stage, we had quite a fruitful conversation among ourselves. So we'd like to share that with you, everyone, as well. So may I start off with Dr. Purnim? You mentioned that you have vast experience working in different positions inside the government and outside the government as well, serving as different ministerial committees and etc. How have these positions and roles informed your view on why government is important and how external stakeholders can work with government?
Thank you. So, I thought that the title for this conference was very interesting when I got the invite, The Asian Decade. It makes one feel very inspired, and it's like a promise that, it's going to happen in this decade. And while I was thinking about it, I was also thinking, what will it take? Because there are many forums and there are many such, decisions, people make declarations, and a lot of this does happen. So what's it really going to take? And it did feel like it will be the quality of decisions by people in business and government as two of the large pegs, and the number of players and institutions in the middle that take on different colors. And over the years, I think that's what I've come to understand as being the meaning of, effective governance. Governance is actually this fine quality of decision making, when you have to choose, when, the odds are up against you, and what road do you take? And what are the guardrails you put in place to make sure that, those choices are actually within a continuum of what is acceptable while still having enough space to improvise. And if we talk about Asia, what is Asia really? It's a set of 49 countries, 5 of which are contributing to 75% of the value of Asia. And you have all the others contributing to the balance 25%. And if there is a story about the Asian decade, it's probably something which needs to work for all in that spectrum. There will be a few which will be ahead, there will be a few, but we need to, I think, acknowledge the diversity that is there in this room and in the nature of our economic and social journeys. And also look at, within each country, there is so much variation, right? If I look at India, the district level story, the city level story, the state and national level is so, you have to hit at every peg if you want change to happen. And that is true as I talk to people across other countries as well. So I would say the first or one important element of the secret sauce is probably to make sure that the focus on the local is not lost in the aspiration for the global. Because local choices will help to expand, and it's unless the local economy is really growing, people have jobs, people are able to get access to education, healthcare, the larger national and international narrative is not going to happen. So getting business, getting leadership to focus on how is this fine quality of local economy, building up is important. It's something that I'm writing about as well. And I do see a lot which different players across the spectrum can contribute to in terms of the work that they choose to do, the places that they want to invest in, and the narrative that they want to shape. The second point I would like to make is about, this is then a story of granularity as well, right? There's this large canvas and aspiration, and then there's granularity. So leveraging digital to make this granularity actually happen. What I mean by that is today we have the tools, right, to be able to pinpoint your geocodes, to be able to do profiling and all of that, to use it better for what government needs to do and can do. And I do believe that the private sector has immense capabilities in this space. The government has vast aspirations in each country. And there is a meeting of the minds there which still needs to happen. And so if we were to, look at crafting this space of going granular with digital as a very strong partnership space where capacity building can be more, where, one of the members of parliament was telling me that as I get elected every year, I have this one constituency that I do need to cater to. Which are those top 3 issues, if I'm able to address it consistently over time, ensures that A, the narrative also changes. Of course, the side benefit is of getting re-elected, and that is a political reality for everybody. But how do we zero in on these questions of what to target? Which are the top 3 things I need to do? How much do I need to move the needle? And there, I think today we have technology which is going to be able to help us to do it. We need to do it smartly. We need to do it in ways that bring in the best of privacy and other laws, etc. But I do believe we have these capabilities in some of the smaller startups that are devising some of these solutions. It's there with some of the larger tech companies. We heard from Google and others earlier in the day. And AI for good will definitely happen, but we need a lot of investments into good quality data systems to start with, so that a lot of this can come together. That brings me to the third point of capacities. I do believe that augmenting capacities is something where government, social investors, private players can work together on quite a bit. I worry sometimes because when capacity building is positioned as something where, I will teach you how to do it because you don't know it well enough, the conversations in the room do not move ahead. Which is why I would go with a term like augmenting capacities, because that creates this space of, you have something, I have something, and we bring it together. And in that journey, at least what I find is that these partnerships are never easy. So we've done some very large partnerships. I've had a seat at the table of some of them. No partnership is ever easy, right? Marriage is not easy. Marriage is a partnership everybody in the room deals with, right? But you have to keep working at it. You have to find ways to, arrive at solutions that work together. And this tenuous relationship between business and government is also like that. And there's always a choice to, keep it a limited engagement. But I have seen cases where if there is a meeting of the minds, the kind of scale which can be is really very fascinating. So with that, I'll pause and maybe come back to it later. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the 3 points that three key points that you made. Focus on the local, focus that the local is not lost, right? That is very important, and they use digital and augmented capabilities. Thank you very much. So from that, may I move on to Dr. Beverly? In your role in both sides of the fence, because you have worked you're currently working in the government side, but you have worked in the non-government side before. Sorry about this. Sorry. So, what lessons can you share about how private entities can work with the government from your experience? Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely, what I've seen from both sides of the fence is that we all have to root for the government. It needs to win. And it's because if it works, then we are all taken care of. And especially during the pandemic, what is most critical was making sure that at least for people who can fend for themselves, they can probably do it, but the bottom of the pyramid has to be taken care of. And government has that biggest role to take care of those people. Because if they're not taken care of, then there's actually no such thing as safe, as public health, as healthy for all of us. So that said, in the past couple of years of working on both sides of the fence, I think clearly what has been starkly challenging for me to see was the ability of both sides to listen to each other and to have this open, trusting relationship. Most of the time, the objectives are aligned, but the way in which one party would want to tackle the problem, use certain tools, whether it's a loan, whether it's a program, whether it's a training program, it's probably different. But then, because most of the time, we don't have the luxury, as in, at least I'm speaking for the health sector, we don't have the luxury of having a revolving door for people in the development sector with the private sector, then the language, the networks, they're often not on the same page. It makes it very, very challenging to get through, to even go the next steps and collaborate. So that said, I go back to what Poonima has mentioned about capacities. And clearly, it's not about transferring one skill set to another, but perhaps making sure that your government is staffed with people who are confident and competent to deal with you, to deal with the non-private sector. And maybe look at your governments not as a monolithic entity. There are different levels. It's different when you talk to someone from the national, regional, and the local. It's also different when you talk to a technocrat versus maybe a senior decision maker. It's also different when you talk to an entry-level person. That means there are also various opportunities to build capacity within governments at all those levels. So for example, in our case, we were able to tap, say, the Chandler Institute to work with our entry-level staff who are usually not prioritized within the government budgets to receive training because they're new, they're still on a contractual basis. In certain cases, we have also utilized learning by doing methodologies. For example, our office is poised or is targeting to become, similar to a Singapore Health Promotion Board or the Thai Health or Vic Health of Australia, right? So in doing that, we have to do certain behavioral interventions, which we haven't done before. So what has happened during the pandemic was we were able to tap a private entity who's specializing in behavioral interventions to help us pilot for free in 5 hospitals, a mental health intervention to relieve stress among healthcare workers at the height of the pandemic. But after that successful 5-hospital run, the government then funded the expansion to 20 hospitals. And because we received very, very good feedback from our health workers, next year we're going to be implementing it in 200 hospitals in the entire country. So things start small. I do agree with the keynote from Ma'am, from Rockefeller, we start small. The pilots are there, the capacities are shared, but the scale up will eventually have to be taken on and decided on by the government. So I think I'll stop there. But this has been our experience so far.
Thank you very much. I'm very interested in the fact that you have collaboration with private entities in understanding people at different levels to start off with successful pilot projects and then be able to scale that up in a larger scope, right? So thank you very much. Now we go to you, Wei Nang. So how we talk about building capabilities a lot, but how do we know which capability matters most to the government? And may I ask you the second questions also, that why do you think effective national government are important for system change?
Thanks. Those are very important questions, also very big questions. So I don't claim to be able to know the whole answer to this. I'll try to share some perspectives from CIG. So the first thing about, maybe if I can tackle the systems change part and why good government is important to systems change, I think there are at least maybe two levels to that response. The first is that governments are uniquely poised to implement large-scale efforts and programs, and also uniquely positioned to do things that no other organization within a country can do. For instance, pass laws and regulations, or provide public infrastructure. Governments also have this ability to scale programs at the national level. So I think that is the first level of the response. But I think the second level of the response goes back to what both my fellow panelists mentioned, which is about the importance of trust. And I think the second part of that response is really about how good government leads to, or is, I guess, one critical pillar of a successful and prosperous nation. And that goes back again to what Pak Sandi said this morning when he outlined some of the priorities of government, ranging from, for instance, economic recovery and resilience to sustainability. And in turn, those things, and those are very important goals that the minister mentioned, and in turn, those things are very dependent on investment and trust. So when countries are stable, when they are peaceful, when they are well-governed, talent and capital gravitate towards countries like that. And that in turn creates a virtuous cycle that provides governments with the resources and also provides people with jobs and the ability to save and plan for the future. So that in turn creates a prosperous society that at the systemic level, and that starts from good governance. Of course, it's not only about good governance, you also require the efforts of the private sector and people and organizations to do this. But government is critical in that process. You asked another question, I think, about what capabilities matter, right? And I think for that, frankly, I think all governments are different. All nations are different. They all have their own unique characteristics and their own unique operating environments. But there's also perhaps similarities, which is why some of our panelists mentioned that governments can learn from each other and can also adapt to what they're doing, take reference from what other countries are doing. So I think the second part of that is that at CIG, we asked governments really what capabilities matter most to them. We are practitioners ourselves. Most of us are formally from some government or other. But we found it necessary to ask practitioners what skill sets, what capabilities matter and help them succeed. So while we were designing the Chandler Good Government Index, one of the questions we asked is, how do you define good government? And we conducted interviews and consultations with government practitioners and civil servants from 5 continents. And we asked them what capabilities are most important to you, what capabilities help you succeed. And we were very struck by the alignment and the similarity of the responses we received. So regardless of of course there were some differences, but regardless of income level, size, geography, political system, we got strikingly similar ideas of what capabilities were important to governments. And these maybe, I can put them in maybe 3 buckets, just 3 broad buckets. I think the first bucket is really in terms of leadership development and stewardship. So the ability of governments to develop leaders, good leaders that are civic-minded, that have strong integrity, that perhaps understand that leadership is not about power, but about stewarding one chapter of a national story for future generations. So that kind of leadership is very important in the public sector, and the skills required to do that are also very important. The second basket of skills probably relates to organizational and institutional development. So how do we build strong institutions in government? And strong doesn't mean strong for the sake of being powerful, it means effective and accountable. So there you have a range of capabilities like the ability to budget, ability to design effective organizations, to manage human resources. So those are important capabilities for governments as well. And finally, I think we want to look at specific technical skills that governments require to do their work. So these are things that are important for the public sector. Could range from everything from tax design, policy analysis, international negotiations, public communication, stakeholder engagement, which are important for governments to do their work. So I think, if I were to talk about capabilities, I think those would be the key. And the reason I'm able to sort of talk about these in a coherent way is that these also form the basis of a lot of the training that the Chandler Academy of Governance conducts for government leaders around the world. So I think we do place a priority on first asking governments what capabilities are important, and secondly, figuring out how we can work with them to enhance those capabilities, like you've said.
Thank you, because we can always ask, right? Because different government and different entities, they want different things, they use different skills, but the basis of that is the leadership, organizational skill, and technical skills. Thank you very much. May I come back to you again, Dr. Purnima? We talk about opportunities, we talk about ways to enhance capabilities for the government. We need to talk about challenges too. In your past experience working with the government or in the government, have you faced, what are the challenges of collaborating between private and public partnerships and to build capabilities like what you just mentioned earlier?
Sure. So most of my work has been working with government, but from the private sector perspective. I think if one looked at what have been challenges or constraints, I think budgets are often a challenge where the leadership does see that there are things that need to be done, but perhaps there aren't earmarked budgets for those items, and where if a private player or a social investor has that flexibility and they can come in and do that, then it is something which is of, if it is done in a timely manner, then it's a value add. For example, there was this time where a PMU needed to be set up with the Smart Cities mission, and we the trust had come and helped to set up that team. So very quickly then they had the resources to get going, and then in a few months they did put out the tender, and then the government did get their approvals in place and got their own teams up and running. But that, the timeliness of being able to do something like that was something that we at the private sector were able to do. Similarly, we ran a capacity building program for across both smart cities and for some of the districts. And their designing of those tools or coming up with what could be done was something we were able to do at our end. So what I find is that people, so if one looked at challenges could be budgets, challenges could be on the people front. I think you mentioned that as well. One big challenge, I think, is language. Are you talking the same language, and are we understanding each other? And this I see the language of business, the language of academia, the language of government, the language of civil society. The lexicon is slightly different, and I think one of the earlier speakers in the morning also brought this up. And there are few people who have the ability to understand these languages and be and I think AVPN is a great convener in that sense, of being able to talk that language and bring those people together. So that is also a missing skill set where, when you're going in for a meeting, does the other person in the room completely get what you're saying? Or do you have someone in the room who's able to bridge that and make the conversation or the deal or the MOU more productive so that both parties have agreed to the same set of things and they're able to, move forward? So these are some of the challenges that I think if are thought through, there are ways to kind of surmount them.
Yes, definitely. On the budget, the people and language, I just had this conversation with a colleagues about language barrier. For example, in Thailand, there are so many social innovators who have created very amazing initiatives, but they cannot go out to express or present their initiatives because of the language barrier, and that is very important in capacity building as well, and that's the challenge. Do you, Dr. Beverly shares the similar or different kind of challenges working between to create collaboration between the private and public entities?
Definitely. I would always say that maybe insecurity among some people in government makes it very, very difficult for them to deal with the private sector, right? Because they feel like maybe I don't have their skills. Maybe they're gonna be not be so forthcoming with everything, etc. So I guess from a regulatory standpoint, that's always going to be a challenge when you don't feel that the stakeholder you're dealing with is your co-equal. And I think that's where we go back to saying it's important to invest in a very capacitated a set of civil servants, not just because a scholarship gives them a degree, but maybe a scholarship to a reputable institution not just gives them a degree, but a network, confidence, etc. No? So there are other pluses to a particular opportunity that gives them or makes them more confident to take on that role. And sometimes it's not just about competence per se or their technical skills, but that add-on that makes them easier to deal with.
Oh, thank you very much. May I stay on?
Can
Yes,
I add
please.
a short
Of course, please
afterthought? One more point that I think is a challenge is data.
Oh, how?
We don't have good quality data at country level, at district level, at local level. So to plan investments, to figure that out is very important. And it's the dearth of it, I think, affects all of our national ability and our institutional abilities to make a dent. So I would be very happy to see some social investors come forward and say that helping governments to build data capacities is something we would be willing to shoulder along with government, and academia can play a role there too as far as the technical skill sets are concerned. But that's one big gap area as well. So for some of these gap areas, if social investors are willing to see or plan that we would like to partner with the government to bridge, say if it's people, then PMU type of support, which is a project management unit kind of support, we would be willing to come in for a large government program. Or if they wanted to say that, we would like to fund certain type of data systems coming together, or we'll build the technology for you.
Oh, wow.
We have the technology, we'll offer it for you at a license-free format, and you please use it. So there are these pathways, I think, which are possible, which we need to be collectively a little more creative about.
Wow. I'm very interested in this. Are there any examples of success cases of private entity support government with data, and like the government used these data for any part of the development work that you have?
So one interesting program I had the opportunity to be part of is the Aspiration Districts of India program, where across there were the select districts identified for more work, and where we had played the role to help ground up data collection to kind of supplement what is already collected administratively through the districts. And so building that platform and making that data available was something the private sector, the Gates Foundation was also actively part of that. So had got developed, and I think once good use cases of these kind are there, then the government is able to make a much more solid case to make budgets available for those things. So private sector can play a good first step role and then help crowd in more investments. So we do have some examples.
Thank you. That's a very interesting way, kind of like guidelines for others to follow as well. Before going back to you, may come back to Dr. Beverly again. As you work currently inside the government, you talk about leveraging some private civil society to help you understand the people at different levels. But are there opportunities for leveraging on stakeholders such as social innovators and NGO to tackle the issues that you work with in the government?
Definitely, we are not fully resourced, so any additional help will actually be much appreciated. So in fact, for example, for our campaign for COVID-19 vaccination, where we were able to reduce vaccine hesitancy from 32% to 8%, that was really because of a lot of private sector support. So for example, the biggest malls in the country really just gave their space for us to do the vaccination for free. The advertising agencies also supported us with things that we probably wouldn't be able to think of. The different restaurants, malls, etc., were the ones who offered to give discounts to the general public if they get vaccinated. So there were just a lot of ideas, but we needed a platform. And I think from our side, it was just to make sure that we had that for other people who are willing to contribute, public, private, NGOs, people's organization, to say, this is my pitch. Is the government supportive of this? As long as the direction, I think, and the targets are clear for all of us, then it's easier to be aligned with our goals.
Thank you. Large opportunity there. So now I keep you at the very last because we have seen opportunities and we have seen challenges. And I have asked for you as well, as you mentioned earlier. So what are some of the most effective ways social innovator can partner with governments to enhance government effectiveness?
Sorry, I'll just make a quick response to this because I think we are about coming to the end of the session. So I think that's a great question. I think perhaps I can talk first about what is more common and more widely used as a way of partnering with governments. So we see a lot of programmatic funding that is going to governments, supporting governments with financial resources, and that is important. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is perhaps technical assistance that engages experts to come in and do things for the government. Okay, so that's maybe a second way. And maybe lastly, it's when impact organizations or foundations seek endorsement or approval or licenses from government to do what they want to do in a country. So those are a bit more common. But I think I'd like to appeal that we also think about how we can work with governments to strengthen government capabilities and support government effectiveness. So that's a fourth area of working with, partnering with governments that is perhaps a bit less explored, perhaps for some of the reasons or the challenges that our panelists have brought up, perhaps due to unfamiliarity or lack of trust. So our previous speaker from Rockefeller Foundation, I seriously agree with that point that we move as fast as the speed of trust. So trust has always been key for all our partnerships. We can't move with that. And just to say that, at AVPN, we're very pleased to have seen a whole group of very passionate, dedicated foundations, social investors, impact organizations, non-profits, dealing with a lot of important issues. So ranging from climate change, digitalization, education, health. So our appeal to everyone is that if you care about these things, then please also care about governance and governments. Because effective governments are going to make all this so much more powerful, and they're going to magnify and leverage all your work so much more. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. It seems like we are running out of time. So thank you very much, all the distinguished panelists, and thank you very much to the audience for this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, Dr. Beverly, Purnima, and Dr. Topaz. One day, Thomas Edison came home from school and gave a piece of paper to his mother. He told his mother that his teacher gave this paper to him and said, Give this to your mother only. His mother opened it and read the paper. After reading it, her eyes filled with tears. Thomas asked his mother what was written in the paper. She read the whole letter in a loud voice to her son. Your son is a genius. This school is too small for him, and we don't have enough resources and good teachers to train him. Please teach him yourself. Several years passed, and Edison's mother died. Thomas Edison has now become one of the greatest inventors of the century. One day, while Thomas was looking into old family things, he saw a folded paper in the corner of his desk drawer. It was the same piece of paper which was given to him years ago by his teachers in school to give to his mother. He opened the paper and it read, "Your son is mentally ill, and we won't let him come to school anymore." Thomas Edison cried for hours and wrote in his diary, Thomas Alva Edison was a mentally ill child that by a hero mother became the genius of the century. Youth need two things to develop their full potential and beyond. The first and most important one is someone who believes in them. The second is something that people who believe in them can help to create an opportunity. We are the people that believe in our youth, and the opportunity that we have created for them is the Youth Opportunities Platform. Led by AVPN, with founding support from the City Foundation, the Youth Opportunities Platform will invest in youth priorities in Asia. Please welcome my colleague Amanda Key, Product Manager at the Capital Mobilization Team, to tell us more.
Thank you, Dot, for the lovely story. Well, the thing about youth empowerment is that it isn't new. Many of us know why it's important, and many of us are taking steps to make it happen. But there are people in this room today who have a vision of how we can perhaps engage with this concept of empowerment differently. And so when we piloted the AVPN Youth Opportunities Platform a few months ago with the AVPN community, we found that there are ways where we can actually change the dynamics and even the status quo for young people. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Oh, is this just another youth platform? How radical can that be? At least that's what I thought when I first embarked on this. But I stand here today believing in what we can achieve together with you. Because this is not just another recreation of the same wheel. This platform aims to be the accumulated strength of all of your efforts, learnings, resources. This platform makes sure that your blood, sweat, and tears do not go to waste. By harnessing the power of this network, this platform can match your resources more effectively to the people who need them, whether you're a funder, a policymaker, or a youth entrepreneur. In fact, this platform is made more resilient because today, this room, this decision-making room, is joined by not just another token youth voice. It is joined by the youth personality. And we make sure that the youth personality doesn't get lost through this platform. So whether you participate as a funder, or as a resource provider, or as a policymaker, be prepared to take that step to be a bit more experimental, to be vulnerable, to be candid, and most importantly, to take decisive action together. And our young impact leaders are here with us today to make sure we walk the talk. Our speakers will share a bit more of their experience with the platform thus far later today. For now, I'd like to give you a glimpse of what this platform can be for you through this video. Let's watch how it unfolds.
We all talk about changing the status quo. We all talk about systems change. Unless and until we hear voices that are outside our echo chamber, we are not going to really be able to bridge that gap. If we want to bring the youth voice in key decision making. It is important that different groups come together on this platform, starting with youth leaders, but then moving on to funders and finally also to policymakers, and discuss in a safe, non-threatening environment how they may collaborate and how they may partner.
Hi Matt, good afternoon.
Hi Esther, thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
I'm really excited to be here, Matt, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you as well.
When I saw the AVPN Young Leaders Program, it was something that speaks a lot to me.
Invest in the person, not the project. And I would add to that notion that the project is just an expression of the person. Oftentimes, we do not get the first opportunity because we don't have track record. Once you get onto a very prestigious network, it means a lot. It changes the dynamics of the conversation.
So many foundations, nonprofits around the world, they're focused on specific issues. What we're interested in is finding special, talented people, on finding areas and people who governments and private industry are not currently betting on.
There are enough resources to go around. I suggest that to the funders to open their heart, not just their minds, when they talk to the young social entrepreneurs, because they're doing something that we would have wanted to do maybe years ago. And we have that opportunity to bridge that gap between problem solvers and companies that have the resources.
Being open to consider a new model of working would be an important step in making a progress as an ecosystem, because that will really help a lot of entrepreneurs.
The expectation is not for the 16-year-old by the time they're 18 to have changed the world. The importance of networks is huge. I can imagine RISE winners going to AVPN in search of other funding opportunities to scale ideas that RISE has already seeded, or to connect with other people who are working on similar topics and projects. So building that network of networks is very important to us.
This is just the beginning. AVPN is just opening the doors for all of us and a conversation that will keep going.
I would like to call all funders to really incorporate the voice of the youth when they are making decisions about where to fund, how to fund, and when to fund. Decisions are made better when you incorporate the voice of the young.
Youth should be able to voice their concerns and opinions as the future is in their hands.
We are proud to be an anchor partner of the Youth Opportunity Platform. We look forward to meaningful partnership with this community of social investors.
I hope that all of you who come onto this platform come with the same feeling that by sharing your experience, by sharing your knowledge, you will actually help make this movement a much stronger one.
So after an entire day talking about the challenges, the opportunities, and even the secret sauce to maximizing impact and moving capital towards impact, I'm really excited today to also remember why we are talking about this. And I think a big part of that is really to help our youth and our children build a better and more equitable future for themselves. And that's why I'm so excited today to have our panelists who are the youth impact leaders who are really on the ground realizing this positive impact. And we are very keen to hear about your experiences and also what makes this Youth Opportunities Platform different. For now, I want to introduce first our panelists. We have Pin Kasem Siri, who is the Business Development and Partnership Lead at Generation Thailand. We also have Richa Gupta, who is the co-CEO and co-founder of Lapia Foundation. And we also have Ryan Garsava, who is the founder of Virtual Lahan. And then last but not least, we have Yibin Chu, the head of community investing and development at Citi Foundation for Asia Pacific. I actually want to start with you, Yibin. Can you tell us a bit more about this youth opportunities platform, and also what makes it different from what is already out there? And what does it really mean when you say we want to take a collective approach to funding youth opportunities?
Sure, thanks to Edith. It's great to join the panel with all these young impact leaders, and I'm sure everyone is going to find their stories very inspiring. Well, at Citi and Citi Foundation, we have a long track record of supporting youth. In fact, we've invested more than $275 million in supporting youth globally in their youth employment and youth employability. Here in Asia Pacific, in 2020, we expanded our Pathway to Progress initiative with a new commitment of $35 million from Citi and Citi Foundation in philanthropic investment to advance economic opportunities of youth from low-income and underserved communities in the region by 2023. So far, we've delivered more than $24.5 million towards this commitment, supporting over 111,000 youth across the region, and also supporting more than 49 organizations across the region. I think it goes without saying the donors, investors, and the policymakers are all investing in youth across the region. But I think a lot of people in this room would agree with me, there's not enough done on the ecosystem level. Most of the efforts have been done in silos or at a bilateral level. What this created is duplicated efforts in some of the areas and the blind spots in other areas. More importantly, it is time to rethink how we work with young people. Young people must be empowered as solutionists by harnessing their creativity, energy, and innovation. They also need to be decision makers in response to challenges that most impact their generation and their future. Speaking from our 5 years experience with Youth CoLab, which is co-led by UNDP and Citi Foundation, right now is the largest youth social entrepreneurship movement in Asia across 28 countries. Putting youth front and center to lead a movement that's by youth and for youth has been the game changer. That's what we want to do with this Youth Opportunities platform. So at the center of the platform are youth solutionists and young impact leaders who are advocating for youth priorities. They are supported by the public, private, and social sector practitioners who will co-create solutions with youth, for youth, and help mobilize capital towards impact at scale.
Speaking about centering youth priorities and also youth voices, I want to go to you, Richa. Can you tell us a bit more about your work at the foundation and what does that collective approach look like in your day-to-day?
Thank you so much, Judith, and thank you for your kind words. As you know, I run a nonprofit back in India called Labhya Foundation, and what we do is we partner with state governments to make emotional well-being and mental health accessible to over 2.4 million children at scale through government partnerships. And I think to your question, I think the Youth Opportunities platform is so much more than like Amanda said, we usually imagine, right? We have an amazing advisory circle assigned to us, which is much more than a mentor-mentee relationship, turning into so many collaborations now that, and I'm sure my other youth impact leaders will share more about that. The second thing is that AVPN is really harnessing our expertise and the experience we already have into the field and connecting us to relevant people. For example, I specialize in child development, and thanks to AVPN, I'm also a lead reviewer and expert reviewer in the Lego's upcoming challenge, which is the Play to Change the World challenge. And I think that's excellent. And I think thirdly, AVPN is extremely intentional about putting young entrepreneurs' voices out there and really ensuring that what we are saying, what we are doing, and what we are acting on is going out there in the world. A good example is tomorrow, and I hope you're all there for it. We have a session where all of the 10 young impact leaders are presenting about our enterprises and the work we're doing and what kind of support we need. So I think those are a couple of ways that the YOP has been in action.
Thank you, Richa. We'll all be there. I also want to go to you, Pin. So you started out as a private entrepreneur, and then you shifted to becoming a leader now at Generation Thailand. How has this AVPN advisory circle helped you in that transition?
So maybe let me share a bit. Previously, before joining Generation, I was running my own social enterprise called Career Visa. What we were doing is focusing on career development for the young Thais. Unfortunately, with the network that we used to have, we weren't able to really unlock the funding with the government. I decided to make a career shift and join Generation. Generation is a global not-for-profit organization that works on education to employment transformation process. Our key solution is focusing on providing a boot camp that put people into highly demanded jobs. So if you want to learn more about Generation, you can go on generation.org. But particularly once I have the access to the network of AVPN, then I get to learn from my peers in the network themselves, sharing their story about how this similar problem is being solved actually in their countries. And that gives me hope about how we can do that in the same way in Thailand. My conversation with my mentor, Mr. Sumit from Laurinet Foundation, also he has shared his entrepreneurial journey that he has done in the past and how he has made a lot of changes in employability area in his country also. So I think learning from how these things are made possible in other countries has given me some strategy and how I approach with the same problem that I'm tackling in Thailand.
Thank you. And I think a theme that I'm hearing over and over is this idea of bridging the gap, not just in funding, but also in understanding. I want to go to you, Ryan. You work closely with this idea of bridging the gap and also talking about the systemic change that's needed to really bridge that gap between what donors need and also what funders understand. So maybe if you can talk a little bit more about your work at Virtual Ahan.
Yeah, thank you so much. Being an Ashoka Fellow, systems change is really at the core of what we do. And my experience, there are two narratives that I personally hear all the time from the side of social entrepreneurs. There's not a lot of funding. Right? Social entrepreneurs are always looking for funding, are always looking for capital, are looking for resources. On the other hand, funders are struggling to find social entrepreneurs that are actually investment ready, right? So this paradox that I'm saying, and I think there are several theories that I can form from this. Number one is that when we talk about systems change at Ashoka, we have this 5R model, wherein we need to find the different relationships in a specific issue. In my case, disability inclusion. My role, I am a social entrepreneur who started my business at the age of 22 with no social or financial capital, trying to create and develop actually a solution that breaks down employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. On the other hand, we have people like Sir Richard Branson, who openly talk about his dyslexia, or Elon Musk, that openly talks about being part of the Asperger in the autism spectrum. But there's no bridge that connects our passion, our initiatives, our stories, our shared experiences. And I think the Youth Opportunities Platform plays that big role because one unique part of this program is that connecting us to high network individuals that slowly closes that gap so that we can access those resources, we can access those capital that by ourselves it's so difficult to actually get there. There is a study recently released called The Possibilist. This is one of the largest study among youth change makers all over the world, spearheaded by Changemaker Exchange along with 16 other youth networks. And one of the interesting insight from that study is that only 9% of young change makers are able to fund their daily life from their venture. And 66% needed to go out of their venture doing consulting, doing speaking engagement to actually fund their daily lives, right? So this insight tells us that young change makers are self-sacrificing their personal finance and well-being in the name of social change. And that should not be the norm. And I think that is something that we should openly talk about in conferences like this. Imagine a conference wherein we have 1,000 social entrepreneurs and then 1,000 funders just like talking to each other, sharing each other's realities. And you know, just like in the job fair, you go for a apply for a funding here. If you're not a fit, you go to another and then you go to another. And that experience can create what we call, you know, Michael Porter's shared value creation. I think that's what we should focus on at this point.
Thank you. And you cited an interesting data there. So I want to go to Pin, because you work closely with data in finding these compelling opportunities to bridge the gap between youth and employers. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works in your organization?
Sure. So the problems that we're working around in terms of unemployment, you can see that in our generation, we are more likely to be unemployed like 4 times compared to our parents. 75 million youths around the world are actually at risk of being unemployed. In Thailand, each year there are 230,000 students graduating from higher education system. 2 out of 3 of them are actually struggling in finding a job. At the same time, our government is saying they need 500,000 people in digital area. So you can see that perfect match that could be happening right there. So generation, look at those type of data. We look at which industry, which job role is most demand, and then we capture that opportunity and making sure that we develop employability improvement program that target that perfectly. We go about talking to employers, making sure that we secure those headcounts ahead before actually setting up the program. And then later on, we develop a 4 to 12 weeks program to help improve their employability skills, their technical skills, behavioral and mindsets. So that's kind of the process that we work on at Generation. Globally, we achieve 83% of employment placement rate. Also, in terms of income, our learners gain 3 to 4 timefolds of increase in income once they join our program. So that's kind of the high level of the numbers that we're striving for at Generation.
Thank you. I mean, I think the main achievement really with this Youth Opportunities Platform is making sure that whatever capital is mobilized is actually reaching these priorities that youth feel are the most important. I also want to go back to Yvin, if you want to give us closer to just say, what are your high expectations for this platform? What do you hope it will achieve? And then after that, maybe I can also go to Ryan, Risha, and also Pin to also share what are your expectations, what are your hopes for this platform?
Thanks, Judith. Obviously, well, first of all, you know, by working with AVPN and the other anchor members of the platform, I think we wanted more people to join this journey, right? The more, the better, for a stronger ecosystem that we can build. And we are hopeful, you know, through this platform, we can mobilize capital towards Asia's youth priorities. But one thing I think are very important, you know, just goes beyond identifying social investor opportunities aggregating capital and matching resources for these issues. We are hopeful this platform can be the start of a strong and active community based on trust. The organizations are fully committed to authentic listening to youth voices, co-creating solutions, testing solutions with young people, and also collaborating with a shared desire for impact at scale. I think we are increasingly facing complex challenges in this interconnected world. And the systemic nature of these challenges would require systemic responses. So what we are trying to do with youth, all these young impact leaders and youth solutionists at the center, driving innovative solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing our time, we hope to break down some of the systemic barriers that prevent them, especially those from underserved and marginalized communities, from truly being heard and supported.
I'd like to share 4 quick points on this. Number 1, let us find the alignment and our role within that system, especially the relationship between private sectors, the government, and young change makers. Second, let us be more intentional and less transactional. Let us invest in the person, not just the venture. And finally, let us put young people in the decision-making table like this.
Thank you, Ryan. I think my hope from the Youth Opportunities platform is that this whole day I've been listening to panels talking about trust-based philanthropy, talking about how the next phase for Asia has begun. And I think it's time that young people are not just at the receiving end of this change. Young people are not just on this panel representing millions of young people in the region, but really young people are co-creating solutions. Young people are being trusted to implement those solutions at scale with governments, with large-scale investors. And I hope that the Youth Opportunities platform changes the power dynamic that currently exists between young entrepreneurs, young leaders, and investors.
Just final ad, perhaps just bringing in young people into this conversation, it's making the solution that we're coming up with is more relevant today, making sure that we become more inclusive in developing social innovation.
Thank you, everyone. Together, let us join this Youth Opportunities platform to make sure the social-emotional well-being of our youth are paramount, and regardless of abilities and background, everybody can fulfill their utmost potential, and also that youth can really find the opportunities for them to make sure that in this Asian decade, they can succeed and thrive. Thank you, everyone. I hope to see you tomorrow at the event with the Youth Impact Leaders.
Thank you, Judith, and all of our 4 panelists for this vibrant discussion. I'd now like to invite our speakers to remain on stage, but join me at the front here, just behind the stairs, so that we may officially launch the Youth Opportunities platform. We'll take this time to invite everyone who has contributed to the platform thus far to join us on stage for a quick photo op. At the same time, I'd like to take the opportunity to give everyone a flavor of how different organizations have already been joining this movement in their own unique way. So one of our core stakeholders are our anchor partners. They are none other than PLDT Smart Foundation, the foundation of Go to Gojek Yayasan Anak Bangsa Bisa, YABB, UNDP Youth Collab, Social Ventures Hong Kong, Generation Unlimited India, or YUWA, at UNICEF, and the Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, who is also the host of this year's Y20, the youth arm of the G20. May I invite representatives of our anchor partners up? Our anchor partners are not only influential organizations that are driving innovative and leading youth initiatives, but as their name suggests, they are anchors in providing strategic advisory and markets insights to keep the platform agile. Next, I want to recognize our advisors who have been supporting our 10 young leaders on their growth journey. We have about over 60 funders and resource providers in the AVPN membership who had raised their hands to provide advisory support for our young impact leaders. A few of you are in the room today, so if you have a pin or if you see anyone with the youth pin or if you know your AVPN advisor, please join us on stage as well. Very importantly, I would like everyone to meet our young impact leaders. These young leaders were selected from over 100 AVPN member nominations and have demonstrated potential to lead solutions that empower young people at scale. We have Richa, Ryan, and Pin already on stage, but we also have Dicky, Ted, Kenny, Matt, and Sayaka. Our final young leader, Ji Chen, is based in China and is unfortunately not able to join us today, but he's online with us. And finally, I would like to invite Nena Subawal Batra, AVPN CEO, to join us on stage. And now if you could invite everyone together for a quick photo. And 3, 2, 1. All right, and maybe a fun shot in 3, 2, 1. All right. Yay. All right, thank you everyone. May I invite you? Oh, it's okay. All right, may I invite everyone back to your seats as we close off this segment? All right, thank you. Yeah, just a last. Okay. So for everyone who wishes to be part of the larger movement to empower young people, share your interests by scanning this QR code, and we'll come back to you with opportunities to engage. I want to do a quick shout out. Our young impact leaders will be in action tomorrow. They will be highlighting very vital youth needs in 10 different Asian markets, and what's so exciting is that they will be pitching their solutions through beautifully crafted short films. So if you come and join us, get soaked in the stories, this will be the place to have rich conversations with the young impact leaders and explore how you can work together, whether it is around youth employability, harnessing the power of digital transformation, incorporating EDI strategies into your work, or driving climate action. And finally, don't miss the opportunity to speak with our young impact leaders or with anyone with the youth pin along the corridors. Let's not be strangers, and together we can empower generations.
Thank you, Amanda, Yiping, Judith, Ryan, Risha, and Pin. Our closing keynote speaker consistently delivers ideas worth spreading. He believes in the power of collaborative philanthropy to launch bold ideas. To all our social investors in this room, he once said, if you're ready to give away what's most precious to you, you may be amazed at what the world gives back. Please welcome Chris Anderson, head of TED, to deliver our closing keynote for today.
Hello. I would like to ask a huge favor of you. If you're sitting at the back here, if you're willing, come forward. There are empty seats at the front. I have something personal to share, and some of you are an awful long way away. Don't want to be lonely. This is great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's Okay, so I'm going to share with you an idea today that I haven't shared before publicly, and I'm very, very curious to see what you guys make of it. I wanted to start by meeting Lydia. Lydia is a creative director for Ogilvy here in Indonesia. Last year, something odd happened to her. She was given a gift by a donor couple, an anonymous couple on the internet. The amount she was given was 140 million Indonesian rupees. That's about $10,000 US. Now, there were no strings attached to this gift. It was part of a social psychology experiment to see what would happen when people received a large gift online. Economists, most economists, believe that people fundamentally behave as rational agents, i.e. they act in their own interests. And so for them it would be easy to predict what Lydia would do with that money. She would spend it on things that she needed or wanted. Of course, that's what rational agents do. It is not what happened. Lydia spent 10 million rupees. She gave it to a coworker who she felt gratitude to, and 10 million to another one, and 5 million to a coworker who had been diagnosed with cancer. She gave money to the World Wildlife Fund. She gave money to flood victims. She gave money to a pet shelter. She paid for medical checkups for several members of her family. In fact, she spent almost nothing on her own needs. Now, so what's going on here? Well, Lydia was responding to a force that has underreported superpowers. That force is called generosity. This is what Lydia wrote me. What's remarkable about generosity is that it makes the recipient feel worthy of being seen. I wanted to make other people feel seen, just like I had been seen. Now, in this social experiment that she was part of, her behavior actually was not atypical. 200 people were given $10,000 each in 7 different countries. On average, the amount that they spent generously on others or on other organizations was $6,000, 60% on average. So we need to think harder about this thing called generosity. It builds bridges between people. One act of generosity can spark another act. I want to argue with you this evening that in this connected age that we're in, we can actually amplify much further the magic that is generosity. We can scale it to many, many recipients and potentially do so in a way where ripple effects spread spectacularly. The way we'll do this is by making generosity infectious. You see, we have a problem online. A lot of us, when we think of the internet, we don't think of generosity spreading magically. We think of toxicity spreading. We know what's happened to our world. All this outrage, partisanship, it's terrifying, honestly, and it's tearing us apart, both national level and at a global level. And I think the reason this is happening is a big problem we face. It's a result, actually, of a human bug in our cognition. Evil is compelling. Good, often, is kind of boring. For complex reasons, we have evolved to pay attention to the dark. So what on earth are we going to do about this? Well, we have to find a way to make generosity noticed, to make good things, to make people excited about them and want to share news of them. So how on earth are we going to do that? Well, my own thinking about this has been influenced quite a bit by my journey at TED. I took it over 20 years ago. My foundation purchased it. And back then, TED was simply an annual conference. And I was trying to figure out how on earth could we let the inspiration that people felt as a result of going to that conference, how could we let that out into the world? We tried to persuade television companies to license the talks. Their universal response was, "You have got to be kidding me. Hello? Public lectures on television? So boring." Then, along came something called online video. Now, back in 2005, when we were thinking about this, online video was just a little jerky few square inches in the corner of your screen, usually occupied by cute kittens. But what the heck? We decided we'd do an experiment. We put 6 TED Talks up online, really without expectation. We did not believe that the inspiration people felt in the room would be conveyed online. To our amazement, these videos went viral. I started to get emails that said things like, "I'm sitting in front of my laptop screen, tears are pouring down my cheeks." Or, "Just so as you know, I have just had the most meaningful conversation with my daughter that I've ever had as a result of watching one of these talks." So what were we to do? I mean, it was obvious what we had to do. We kind of had to give away all of our talks. Now, there was a big debate internally about this, because there was a school of thought that this would kill the conference. Why would people pay thousands of dollars to go to a conference when the content was available for free? But those emails, we had to do it. So we did it, and 2 astonishing things happened. 1, instead of demand for the conference falling, it actually rocketed. Kind of obvious in retrospect. People knew about TED suddenly. 2, we were deluged by offers from people to help with our mission. For example, translators. People wanted to translate TED into their language. To the point where today there are 30,000 volunteers who are translating every TED Talk at their expense, at their time, into more than 100 languages. So this really got me thinking, you know, wow, there's a principle here. When you do something bold online, when you give away something boldly, you may be amazed at what happens. Amazed. And we started to think, what else could we give away? Well, there was the TED brand, TED itself. People wanted us to do TED in different parts of the world. We couldn't do it. They should do it. Let them make TED events. So we licensed for free TED around the world using this label, TEDx, where the X stands for self-organized, but also TED multiplied. Boy, did it multiply. We ended up with 3,000 teams around the world putting on TED locally. And what they did was amazing, honestly. Like incredibly, we had TED events held in prisons or in schools. There was an amazing event held in a refugee camp. There were spectacular events held in all kinds of beautiful indoor locations, TEDx Jakarta, and also in outdoor locations sometimes, which sometimes went absolutely beautifully, sometimes not so much. TEDx events were held in parliament buildings, in opera houses, in soccer stadiums. I mean, really, it blew our minds what people did with it. Some of these events were truly terrible, like a few of them, really genuinely embarrassing. But the vast majority were incredible. And every year, organizers learned, they learned from each other, they got better, the system self-improved. So think about this. You've got 3,000 events, an archive of more than 150,000 videos that attracts 1 billion views annually. And it's overseen by 15 people in New York. That's it, 15 people. Now, there is no way you could build a media operation like that traditionally. You just couldn't do it. But thanks to the magic of the internet and the magic of generosity, it's just amazing what can happen. So, thinking about TED's experience and looking at lots of other examples online, what are the common factors here? What makes generosity become infectious generosity? I mean, I think there are 3 things that I want to think about: creativity, audacity, collaboration. Creativity and audacity, because that's what it takes to get something noticed. Collaboration, because that's what it takes to get something amplified. So when you look around, there are beautiful examples of this happening all the time. Here's one that got my attention. There was a group of actors in Japan who were sick of litter in their city, so they decided to do something about it. But if you can turn on the audio there a bit. So they did it not the way you and I might do it. They did it the samurai way. I mean, talk about getting attention. It is no wonder, looking at this, that these videos have been seen by literally millions of people on YouTube and TikTok. And it's those videos that have attracted thousands of people to collaborate with them and spread this as a movement. Essentially, they have made it cool to pick up litter. I mean, wow. Wow. So it's worth thinking about these three things. I really think it's worth every single person or organization to spend some time brainstorming what you could do with this. Like take a day to brainstorm. What is the craziest, boldest thing that you could give away? Just ask what if. Don't look at the downside, just look at the upside, because the one thing you know is that you will not be able to predict the full upside of doing something like that online. This is how we applied this thinking of creativity, audacity, and collaboration. But to set the scene, so we're here at this philanthropy conference, right? And most of us, we're thinking about giving away money, maybe. There is something that is being given away by some people here that is far more valuable than money. It is time. Some people here have actually given their entire lives to making change. So I'd like us to think about how we could make infectious generosity operate in their behavior. Think about what's happening right now. I mean, you may have a name for these people like social entrepreneur or change maker. My own name for them is global hero. Global hero. And here's how we treat global heroes. We treat them disgracefully. Like, do they spend their time actually changing the world like they could? No. Most of them don't. We don't let them. They spend 50, 60, 70% of their time trying to raise money, for God's sake. I mean, this is crazy. This is not how the world should be set up. What can we do about this? So, I put together a group of foundations a few years ago. We started to dream about this problem and what we might do. This is what we came up with. Here's how the Audacious Project works. We first of all go out to global heroes, social entrepreneurs, change makers. We say to them, tell us your biggest dream. No, really, your biggest dream. What could you actually do? What could you and your team do if money wasn't the bottleneck? Dream, be creative, be bold, and ask us for every single penny that those plans would need. So that question tends to get quite a few responses. We winnow down, we try to pick the best of them, and we help maybe 8 to 10 people a year try and figure out the multi-year plan that is crafted. It's evidence-based, it's good to go, it's shovel-ready. And then we pull together groups of donors, maybe 25 or 30 people at a time, or a few more. And they have 2.5 days together, and we present them these plans, both in written form and on video. And we invite them to get immersed in them, to pick the ones that they are most inspired by, and to really decide together whether they can support. The clock is ticking. At the end of the 2.5 days, it's like, are you in or are you not? Here are 3 of the projects that we put to donors. Safina Hussain had an amazing vision for bringing education, the transformative gift of education, to 4 million girls who never in history would have had a chance of it. Safina's with us this week. Shahid Alam, who's also with us, had an extraordinary idea for giving great healthcare to people post their hospital treatment using the power of those who care most about them, their own families. With a smartphone and some training, you can allow people to be looked after in a wholly different way. Transformative idea. Nonette Royo wanted to save millions of hectares of rainforest, and she did so by granting land rights. Her plan is to grant land rights to the indigenous people who live in those forests, whose lives are often at risk. By granting them land rights, they can save themselves, their communities, and they can save the planet. So these are big, bold, audacious ideas. does the process work? Well, incredibly, it does. There is something about the creativity and the audacity of these ideas and the feeling of people together collaboratively that spreads generosity. People's generosity, they see someone else being generous, they themselves want to help. Magic happens. All 3 of these projects have been funded by the Audacious Project. And you know, we've been through 5 cycles of this, 5 annual cycles. Each year the amount raised has gone up. I watched in astonishment in November, the last time we brought a group of donors together, as people, one person just inspired another, and you could see the tears on people's faces, the joy, the excitement. They ended up committing $900 million to fully fund 9 different projects, and it was really, and Anne said it was one of the most exciting weekends of their lives. So something is working there, and I believe it's the early stages. I think the Audacious Project is one example of how infectious generosity can happen because of creativity, because of audacity, because of collaboration. My question to you is, what is your example of infectious generosity? I mean, look, just as an individual, anyone can notice kind acts of human kindness happening around them, and can tell those stories. Just share those stories, they matter. We need to share those stories. One of the tragedies of our time is that generosity is almost meant to be a private thing, we're told. I'm telling you that is wrong. Generosity should not be a private thing. Even our own generosity should not be a private thing. The stakes are too high for this. We are being overwhelmed out there by toxic memes on the internet that are spreading despair, anger, disgust, outrage. For goodness sake, there are millions and millions of acts of human kindness happening every day. They are happening under the radar. If we told the stories of those acts, it would change our collective belief about who we are. We're humans. We're actually shaped by the stories we tell. The stories we tell right now are not the right stories. So a simple act today, a simple act that 50 years ago would have just been a simple act and never gone. Today that act can be told as a story. Millions of people can actually be inspired by it. So infectious generosity starts right there. But then as an organization, as I mentioned, plan what you could give away. It's amazing what you can give away online today. The internet allows us to share so many of the things that matter. You know, think about it. Knowledge, wisdom, beautiful music, gorgeous art, incredible software, free apps, secret recipes, inspiring stories. All of these things can be shared. And who knows how far they will spread. Take a risk. Give away the thing that you are most scared about giving away, or at least think about doing so. If you're a global hero, if you're a social entrepreneur, if you're trying to make change in the world, please, please, please don't let your dreams be taken away from you by people who won't give you the money that you think you deserve. Don't dream smaller. Dream bigger, actually. Be more audacious. The best donors don't want small plans. They actually want big plans. Dream your biggest dreams and give them a shot. If you're a philanthropist here, I beg you to not steal time from the people who most need time, who our world most needs them to have their time. Don't nitpick their plans. Empower them, support them. Don't be deceived by the question, is this possibly the best, absolute best use of my philanthropy? The answer to that question is always, you will never know. That's the wrong question. The question is, might this person do something amazingly good in the world? Back them. It is better for them to have the money for it to be wasting away in your bank account or spoiling your children. Take a risk. It's the right thing to do. And if it's too much money, bring in your friends. Bring in your friends. Discover the incredible joy of collaboration. Doing this together is a joyful, joyful thing. So, look, we look at the future. It's scary. It's scary to a lot of us. but it's not yet written in stone. The future is what humans choose to make the future. This is our incredible ability. We face collectively here, this is our deepest challenge, but also our deepest honor, to stand up and exemplify the power of infectious generosity. To let our watchwords be creative, be audacious, be collaborative, to take back the future, to give it a shot, to watch in awe and excitement as generous acts spread across the planet, each triggering further generosity. I think it has the capability of being such a joyful, transformative process. And we can't do it alone. Together, we really can. So that's my message to you. Let us do this. Let's spread infectious generosity far and wide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Be audacious, be collaborator. Yes, sir. Okay, we have come to the end of day one, almost, because there's a welcome dinner party waiting for all of you at the Western Poolside. The Constellation Award ceremony will take place during the dinner, so come and celebrate our winners. There's also a fiery and inspiring performance by Yayasan Kahana Mutiara. They are the first disabled community in Indonesia to perform a fire dance on wheelchairs. Before you go, I have two announcements. One, something very exciting is happening this Friday evening. There's an AFC Cup football match, and Bali United has generously offered 150 free tickets for AVPN delegates. First come, first serve. You can register for them through the app. Do grab them while you can. And two, lost and found. Someone belongs to this. Come and find me with $5 and you can have it back. It's a Nusa Dua hotel key card. Okay? Yeah, I think you want to get into your room tonight. Yeah. So drink, eat, and party as much as you can. Just make sure that you are back here at 8:45 a.m. bright and early tomorrow morning for more to come on day 2. The best is always yet to come. So inhale and don't exhale until 24th June. Okay. Have a great evening. The ushers will guide you to the poolside. Akan datang and selamat malam.